She thought his name was Ricky Ricardo. So I'm the only poor white trash man in the state of Alabama named for a Cuban band leader. True story. I'll probably put this bottle cap in my pocket. Y'all remember when every fool didn't walk around with a bottle of water? Remember the good old days? You wanted water, you went outside to the hydrant and turned it on, and your mom had planted some elephant ears out there under it to catch the runoff. You remember those good old days? The days before cell phones, when people could wait till you got home. Something happened, didn't it? We went squirrely. Speaking of squirrely, I wrote a book about Jerry Lee Lewis. And the really sad part is of the two of us, how are you doing? You're traveling away, aren't you? Good to see you. Y'all just talk amongst yourselves. How are you doing? Well, you were way too nice to me. And thank you for pointing out that piece of brilliant literature. You know, and don't take this the wrong way. All my groupies tend to be about my age or on. I don't remember. I actually told Jerry Lee Lewis, he and I did a show together, but oddly enough, he never asked me to sing. But when he and I were getting ready to go on stage at the Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble's got a big old bookstore over there in Union Square in New York, and it's got a great history, and it's just a big old place. And we were getting ready to go on stage, and I just gently told him, "Now, Jerry Lee, I know you're used to groupies, but I got to tell you, your book groupie and your rock and roll groupie are going to be a little different. Your book groupie is old enough to remember like at least one of the Bush administrations. You know, your rock and roll groupie, I don't know. But we did this book for a couple of reasons. We did it because my agent called me and told me that they paid me to do it. She called and said, I'll never forget, whenever your phone rings, if you're a writer and your phone rings and it says that 212 area code, you think, well, this is either going to be real good or real bad. And she said, do you have any interest in doing a book on Jerry Lee Lewis? And I said, what I should have said was, no, and gone and hid under the bed. But what I got to thinking, well, you know, how could it be dull? You know, how could it be dull? So the problem was, how do you make Jerry Lee Lewis sympathetic? Now you can't make anything up. This is not a novel. So how do you make him sympathetic? And everybody has a place, a woman. And this was Jerry Lee's. The Black River and the Mississippi River, 1945. Party boats churned up the big river from New Orleans and down from Memphis and Vicksburg, awash in good liquor. enlisting with revelers who dined and drank and danced to tie down pianos and hold brass bands, as their captain skirted Concordia Parish on the way to someplace brighter. The passengers were well-off people mostly, the officer class home from Europe and the Pacific, and tourists from the Peabody, Roosevelt, and Montreal, clinking glasses with planters and oil men who'd always found riches in the dirt that poor men could not see. Weary of the austerity of war, of rationing and victory gardens, of coastal blackouts and U-boats that hung like sharks at the river mouth, they wanted to raise a racket, spend some money, and light up the river and the entire dull, sleeping land. They floated drunk and singing past sandbars where gentlemen of Natchez once settled affairs of honor with smooth-bore pistols and good claret, and around snags and whirlpools where river pirates had lured travelers to their doom. The country people, in worn-through overalls and faded flour-sack dresses, walked from the banks of the Mississippi and Black Rivers the same way they looked through the windows of a store. In the war years, they traded the lives of their young men for better times, but they'd seen too much bad luck and broke down history to overcome with just one big war. Reconstruction, the Great Depression, and named storms and unnamed floods had left generations hunched over another man's cotton, and in their faces you could read the one true thing, that sometimes all you could get of a good life was what you could see floating just out of reach, till it disappeared around a bend in the river or vanished behind a veil of flood-ravaged trees. And sometimes, hauntingly, even when a boat had passed them by, they could still hear the music drifting downriver as if there was a song in the water itself, Dixieland or ragtime, or, before they turned away to their lives in the colorless mud, a faint, thin scrap of Jolson. He was still a boy then. One day, when he was 9 or 10, he stood on the levee beside his mother and father as one more party boat pushed against the current, well-dressed people laughing on deck. Safe in the middle of the Black River, they raised their glasses in a mocking toast to the family ashore. They tipped their mint juleps at us, tipped them up, he says, and smiles the faintest bit, to prove how little it matters to him after so much time. But it mattered to the man and woman beside him. His daddy was indestructible then, gaunt, 6'4", with big, powerful hands that could squeeze weaker men to their knees, and a face that seemed drawn only in straight lines like Dick Tracy in the funny papers. As the drunken revelers lifted their glasses of bourbon high in the air, Elmo Kid Lewis pulled the boy to his hip. "Don't worry, son," Daddy told me. "That'll be you on there someday." He does not know if his daddy meant it would be him up there with the high and mighty, or if it would be his songs they played. "I think maybe," he says, "it was both." Elmo knew it the way he knew wading in the river would get him wet. He had seen it, he and his wife Mamie, when his son was barely 5 years old. Seen a power take over the boy's hands and guide them across a piano he had never studied or played before. For the boy, it was, well, he did not truly know. His fingers touched the keys, and it was like he grabbed a naked wire. But as it burned through him, it left him not scorched and scarred, but cool and calm and certain. Only God did such as that, his mama said, and his daddy bought a pistol, so the miracle could, bought a piano. Pistol, I'm thinking about Jerry Lee. Bought a piano, so the miracle could proceed. Finally, something worth remembering. He rests now in the cool dark of his bedroom and lets it draw at the old poisons in him like a poultice. He is a swaggering man by nature, but for a moment there is no strut in him. He tried to pay them back with houses and land and Cadillacs. Money makes a mare trot, my mama always said. But that debt will never be settled. The piano, the weight of it tilted the world. He still has it, the wood cracked and bugged, deep grooves warning its keys, in a dim hallway in a house where gold records and other awards pile like old newspaper or lean against a wall. He pauses before the ruined piano now and then and taps a single key. But what he hears is different from what other people do. The boat that taunted him is a ghost ship now. The old song sank beneath the river. Elmo's boy is still here. So that's how we thought we would show you maybe a little bit of why even Jerry Lee Lewis had some demons to slay. Of course, he slayed them, and then he just kept slaying. But I really would rather talk with you than talk at you, and I know that these people at the Warren County Public Library System run this thing like an Italian train. So when we get up on time, you'll see some mean, fierce-eyed women come rushing up here, you know, to keep that train running on time. Mussolini. So, yes, ma'am. You didn't see my 1986 Ford Bronco parked outside the Gamecock Motel, did you? No, I didn't go to Jerry Lee's birthday bash. No, ma'am. I had a book to write. Hey, you people with lots of free time, can go gallivanting around Nashville and do things like that. But those of us with work, with jobs. Yes, ma'am. Did he do a good job? Yeah. Ain't nothing wrong with his hands, is there? Yeah. Time has taken a toll on his body. His voice is still good. Time has definitely taken some of the boom out of his voice, but he still can. Man, he can still yodel. It takes a man to yodel. Like y'all don't know what yodeling is. We're up here where the yodel was born, you know. But Jerry Lee can still do it. But at one point during the interviews, the way we did these interviews is Jerry Lee has had chronic arthritis, crippling arthritis in his back. He cannot sit up for a long time, so he lay in bed, and he also had a compound fracture in his leg, shingles, pneumonia twice, and that's just the beginning of the list of things that were wrong with him. So he lay in bed, and every afternoon I sat in a rocker, which is getting to be my best form of transportation. And I sat there, and day after day after day after day, he kind of took me off down through the past. But at one point, it was very spooky. At one point, he held his hands up and just kind of looked at him like that. And you have to know Jerry Lee. He just looked at me and said, "Still perfect." So he's a lot of fun. No, but I didn't make it. I liked it. You know, I've never, true story, I'm ashamed to admit, I've never been in the Rhine. No, I know, but I've never been. I'm a little mad at them for what they did to Hank Williams. I think that if you sing as beautifully as Hank Williams sang, that you should get as drunk as you want to get. Nobody in the management of the Ryman had the right to tell Hank Williams, you can't go out there and sing Love Sick Blues. Hank Williams, you know, when Hank Williams did Love Sick Blues, and there's a picture of Hank Williams in Jerry Lee's bedroom, and it looks down from the shift rope, and it still has a black ribbon on it when he died. But you know, Hank said, you know, when they told him, so you can't record Love Sick Blues. This is the 1950s. This is the modern era of country music. You can't do a yodeling song. You know, and Hank, who was drunk, said, you know what? I can throw my hat out on the boards of the Ryman after singing Love Sick Blues, and my hat will get 3 encores. Is it any wonder that Jerry Lee Lewis loves But I'm still mad at him for that. Yeah. Jerry Lee didn't. He got invited back, and they have a set way they do the show. You're supposed to go and you do a song, and then they have some ad for flour, and then you do it. Then they do 3 songs, and they have an ad for flour, and then you do like 4 songs. Jerry Lee completely ignored that. He sat down and just played every song he could think of. Played rock and roll, embarrassed everybody. He loved every minute of it. Someone else have a question? This ain't Methodist Church, yes.
Were you ever frightened interviewing him? Did you ever fear for your life? Honestly. I mean,
the question was, did I ever fear for my life?
I mean, was it frightening at all, like a little nerve-wracking?
Well, I'm not going to lie. Jerry Lee Lewis shot his bass player in the chest.
Exactly.
So, if you think about that, if you shoot a good bass player,
yeah.
I mean, if you'll shoot a good bass player, why not shoot your biography? I mean, what's worth more to you? He did show me his brushed steel 357 Magnum. It wobbled around a bit, because it's heavy.
Loaded?
And yeah. Because that's what you do with 2 Southern boys get together and there's a gun involved. You definitely won't pass it around while it's loaded. And I looked around the room and I noticed that there were bullet holes in the wall. And there was bullet holes in the shifter rope. And I know guns. I grew up with guns. And I ain't surprised by guns. And I said, Jerry Lee, you can load that 357 with 38 shells. And then you won't blow such big holes in it. Stuff. Riders. Stuff like that. And he just gave me this look, like Jerry Lee look, said, I don't think I'll do that. But, he was actually, and we have a lot of fun with that. I mean, he did certainly I made him mad. And because it is his own story as told by him. When I say as told by him, it came from his thoughts. But it's a third-person book. So my reputation is on the line with this book. It's not an as told to book or a co-authored book. It's a pure biography. So my reputation is on the line, which means I can't ignore history in this book. So I had to ask him some difficult, damning questions. So he don't react well to that. But he understood going in. He really, truly understood going in that this is his chance to have his say. But also, he couldn't holler at me, I mean, look, I covered the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. I've covered Haiti on fire. I've covered killing and dying much of my life. So this wasn't my first goat roping. Surely I could handle an old rock and roll singer, But then again, it is Jerry Lee Lewis, which is an altogether different proposition. Now, Jerry Lee don't really mellow. He just kind of petrifies. So that's a good question. Yeah, there were times when I would interview him and I would ask him questions that would be so painful that he would physically turn away. So there were some rough moments, but mostly he was gracious, treated me good. My mother had a heart attack during the process of me doing this book and needed a stent. And only my mother would have a heart attack, and I would find out about it like 2 weeks later. And so they put a stent in, But that terrified me as she was under anesthesia and on the operating table. And I was scared to death, and I was standing, pacing in the Alabama hospital with my brother Sam, and my phone rang. And it was Jerry Lee Lewis saying, just wanted to tell you I was thinking about you and see how your mom's doing. So, and I don't, Jerry Lee is a lot of things, but he's not really manipulative. He just does what he wants. And so he got a lot of brownie points for that. Someone else have? Yes, ma'am.
How is your mom?
Well, if that story had not had a happy ending, I would not have evoked it. She's doing good. She's everything seems to be going good with that. She refused to go get her stress test just because she just refuses to do things like that. And me standing over her, calling her and saying, why'd you do that, doesn't matter. I have as much influence over my mama as standing looking at a rock and telling that rock, I want you to hop up in the air and spin around. I have yet to see a rock do that. So I have I beg and wheedle, and the way I get her to do it is, we all have health trouble of one kind or another, so I will tell her, if you don't go to the doctor, then I'm not going to. And we'll see who gives in first. And she don't care if she goes, but she cares that I go. So that's how I get her to halfway get her to do right. I never dreamed that I'd be 55 years old and trying to and begging my mother to go to the dermatologist, whom she refers to as Dr. Butcher. So to answer your question, I guess she's doing all right. Let me go to this gentleman right here.
What was the genesis for your agent to call you to ask you to do this book? I mean, was it a request from Jerry Lee?
I'm just a genius. No, I don't know how many people they went through, trying to decide what to do on this.
Well, was it the publisher's idea to do a book?
Well, here's what happened. There's an editor at HarperCollins. Usually I work for Knopf. Or as I called it the first 6 months I worked for it, Knopf. Because I'm very sophisticated. But I was under contract with Knopf to do the book. HarperCollins, who is not Knopf, an editor at HarperCollins named Calvert Morgan is a huge Jerry Lee fan and loves Jerry Lee's music, plays piano himself, and plays Jerry Lee songs, and knows every song Jerry Lee ever did. Every song. And so when word leaked out that Jerry Lee might be willing to sell his rights, his life rights, to his story, that they jumped on it, and because he was, again, a huge Jerry Lee Lewis fan. Well, then who are you going to get to tell it? And I think Jerry Lee might have killed and eaten the first 2 or 3 that they tried to get out there. And finally they gave in, and they called my agent, who is the meanest woman in American books. And she called me, and she said, do you have any interest in doing Jerry Lee Lewis's story? And what I should have done was got a running start and slid under my bed and stayed there until the Jerry Lee Lewis book was written by somebody else. But I thought, I don't know if I've said this already, but how could this be dull? How could this be dull? And dull, if you're a writer, dull is the dream killer. Dull is a dead field to walk And I've been living my whole life. I know this ain't much of an ambition. I mean, I know I should be trying to better mankind, and I think I have. I think by writing stories of the people that those are the Appalachians and showing that strength and character, I know that I've done. I know that when they bury me, they won't just have to say he was a loving father and husband, period. And then after that, they leave it blank because they couldn't think of anything. I know they won't have to do that. But mostly what I've done in my life, in my writing life, is just try to love writing every sentence, you know. And of course you don't, because writing's hard. You know, I don't like writing. I like having written. I like this. You know what I mean? I like this. I don't like what goes into it. That's hard. It's like toting concrete blocks or roofing. Well, actually, it ain't as hard as that. I've done that too. But that's how it happened. And I'm glad they did. I really am. I'm very proud of the book. We found out yesterday afternoon that we come in at the first week of its release at number 15 on the bestseller list. So people are back. But I'm going to dedicate all the money from today's sales of the book to making sure that my mama's donkeys have hay for the winter. So if you don't want my mama's donkeys, buy 2. I almost said 4. Product of the Alabama Public School System. Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to take anything away from you or Jerry Lee Lewis because I enjoy your call in Southern Living.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Before you became my favorite Southern humorist,
Yes, ma'am.
I was a big fan of Louis Grisard.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you influenced by him, and did you ever meet him?
Well, that's a really good question, and I have to answer it honestly. Mostly what I've written in my life was not me. Most of what I've written in my life was the worst thing that man can do to man. I've covered everything from militant Islamic fundamentalism to political murder, in places with palm trees and blue water. And, I've seen morgues stacked higher than this ceiling with victims. Just a meanness. And then I covered, tragedies of other kinds. So, I never wanted to be funny. I never wanted to be funny. Yet it occurred to me very early on that you cannot live at the foot of that mountain of sadness. If you do, then something happens to you. I think you start taking yourself real seriously. I think you start, appearing on CNN or Fox News, stroking your chin whiskers and saying, "Why, yes, in my 4th book on the political unrest." Well, I wasn't going to do that. I love my people. But my people shed a lot of blood. My people buried their rivals under the leaves on mountains where they made liquor. So, there's an edge to our people that Southern humorists do not capture. That said, it's true. When you listen to Jeff Foxworthy, he's funny as all get out. I love when he said that, they were going to have an Olympics in Atlanta. The rednecks would take over and they'd have the 4x4 relay, which would consist of one redneck pulling up to a job site at the Olympic Stadium construction and throwing boards onto the back of the pickup. That's the 4x4 relay. And that water polo sounds like a good idea, but it's a waste of a good horse. But I never wanted to be a humorist, and I do a talk somewhere in the country every week or so, and I will admit, yes, ma'am, that Louis Grisard, the way that he delivered Not just to talk to him like talking to you folks here as we are, but the way that he delivered his calling. When he was writing about loving his mother, there was not a better writer who's ever taken up the pen. When he was writing about loving his people, nobody was better than him. You know? And yeah, he influenced me a great deal. I read him religiously. We'd get to Drunk Constitution long before I became a writer. You know, he'd be there in that and writing sports at first. You know, and then you know, I remember we'd get it from my Aunt Edna. It always had Cairo syrup rings on it. And I saw Lewis once at Jacksonville State University at a talk he gave, and I followed him into the bathroom. He was there at, you don't need to know no particulars. He was there at one porcelain upright, and I was at the other one. And I looked over at him and told him that I too was a newspaper guy. Which he told me, well, that's good, kid. And but he said something I've always remembered. Something I've always remembered, and it's beautiful. It brings tears to your eyes. He said that when he got old, and of course Lewis never got to get old, but when he got old, he was going to move to a riverbank, and he was going to go every afternoon and drop a line. And he was going to marry him a 16-year-old. And he would look at her every now and then, this vision of loveliness, and say to her, if he was feeling good, he would say, come over here, darling, and cook me a bologna sandwich. And sing me a song. So yeah, there's a lot to admire Lewis. Our politics are a little bit different. Lewis, when Lewis got sick, he got a little meaner, you know. And but he was good. He was good, right?
So are you.
Huh?
So are you.
Well, meaner, you mean?
I was referring to the good part.
Well, God bless you, but yeah, you know, I have gotten, I don't know if I've really gotten meaner as I've just gotten, I mean, didn't everybody tell us that when we got a little older, we would be more mellow? Well, hell, that's just a lie. And that's just a lie. My brother Sam, for all my life, my brother Sam, y'all, those of you who've read the books know that he is like the solid, stable, grown up in the family. He's 3 years older than I am. And we're the same height, we're roughly the same size. But the difference is I have suffered from all the ailments of too much good living. He has worked hard every day of his life. He has 4 arms that a conventional watchman can't. He has 4 arms that big. His arms he's never lifted a weight. His forearms are that big. His wrist is that big. His forearms are this big. He's a tree. And and he used to rescue me. I never will forget one time in junior high school, I was going to get beat up in the bathroom. You know, it's a wonder I don't have a phobia about even going in there. I was going to get beat up in the bathroom, and he just basically just cleaned house. Went in there and cleaned house. And he's just my hero. But he thinks I'm a chucklehead. And he told me, he said, I think we're going to get you some of that anger management. And he says it every time. You know, he said, you get mad at everybody. Why are you mad at everybody all the time? You get mad at people if they go too slow. You get mad at people if they go too fast. You know, you go to a place and if the food ain't good, you get mad because it ain't no good. If it is good, you get mad because you ate it all. I just ain't no better. Someone else. Yes, ma'am. y'all help me remember. Yes, ma'am.
I know you write wonderful valuable fiction, and you've also written nonfiction. What is the process for you, the difference between writing nonfiction and your novel?
Well, see, I've never written a novel.
That's true. What's the difference between biography then and your?
Well, they've all got to be true. And it's been my experience that of course, I've never had anybody say this, but it's been my experience in reading it is if you take a liberty, somebody will catch you. And but I think the stories about family, there was a peace of mind when you got them done because you knew, you felt like you know your people. You know, more like those people that you were talking about. The people who don't, know that road doesn't take them anywhere they're interested in going. You know those things because you have lived with those people. You know who they are and how they are. With Jerry Lee's people, now they're similar to my people. The only difference, we joke, the only difference between them and us is that they have webbed feet. And not genetically, I mean, just never mind. Because they're in river bottom country. And next thing you know, I'll be reading, Rick Bragg said Jerry Lee Lewis's people were genetically damaged. In the world of social media, you can get in all kind of trouble. Like if you leave your pickup truck parked outside the Gamecock Motel at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But I think that the big difference was not knowing, even though we were similar, not having that sense of peace of mind, because Jerry Lee and his wife Judith read the book together. They loved it. He knew that there'd be harsh things in it, things that didn't make him look good, but he loved it. I think he liked it because the devilish things he did, we captured in Technicolor. And the sad, heartbreaking things, I think we wrote realistically. But that's the main difference, is you just don't know how people are going to.
Did you like it
Yeah.
better after?
Oh, I liked him all right before because I didn't know him. I liked him a lot before. After it was all over with, yeah, because he was gentler in tiny cracks in his. My daddy was like that. My daddy was all pine knot and homebrew and broken glass and flashing knives. And Jerry Lee was like that. So, again, yeah. I mean, I saw that there was gentleness in him. He loved his people. He buried, 2 sons. He buried a toddler who drowned in a swimming pool, and then he buried a grown son who died in a car wreck. And, his description of going to see the grown son, and they covered the boy's face with a wrap of silk, and a very Gothic place and time. And he raised the cloth and he whispered something to his son, and I know what he said, but I didn't put it in the book. So we left out nothing that was of factual importance. But this, I think he appreciated that. Yes, let's go here and then here and then here and then there. Okay? Yes, ma'am. We're gonna go. Didn't record them on purpose. I took notes on big legal pads, about like this, that with a thick back. You can buy them at the CVS. Y'all have CVS in here? Spiral at the top. Man, I tell you what, you can write the world history of the world. But that was my favorite method. I did not take them for one reason, because that would have immediately resulted in who owns the tapes. So the secret is not do none. I'm a firm believer in heading off trouble by doing what you want to do. And that ain't that different from Jerry Lee. But I took I didn't take them. My notes were pretty good. I mean, But I probably used most of what I wrote down, you know, which is good. But no, because if I had done, and plus, then I'd have had to transcribe the notes. And I mean, we've got this book done in 2023. And I just wasn't going to do it. Now, someone else on the front row. Yes, ma'am.
Is Sam the one that helps your mom rear pretty girl?
No, that's my little brother Mark. That was my little brother that's a constant source of adventure for us. But he loves dogs. And he and my mom, if that old dog, this is an old starving mange-ridden German Shepherd that was emaciated, just bones, limped up to my mama's yard, and they found him a couple of days later. And, you know, anybody else on earth that had found that dog, I'm not saying they wouldn't have tried to have saved her, but people have been giving us their junk all my life. Y'all don't tell me you don't know what I'm talking about, because some of you out there right now are thinking to yourself, you know, I got this old TV down in the basement. I can take it to the dump. Or, you know, my cousin Betty Lou, you know, they ain't got nothing. I think I'll take Betty Lou's this TV. Now it don't play. Y'all know good and well you're out there. And if Betty Lou's out there, you sure as hell know what I'm saying. Someone up here. Let me go here and then there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. A few months back, you wrote about your mother and the cats.
Oh, God, help us.
And you were trying to get all of them spayed and neutered. Did you finish that?
My knife got low. No, ma'am. And I know that the SPCA will be after me. But no, ma'am, I have not attempted it yet. I have been on book tour. And have you ever tried to catch a wildcat? You know, I have actually considered buying one of them beanbag shotguns. You know, y'all know the kind of guns they use to subdue armed robbers? And I think if I backed up like 20 yards, 30 yards, it wouldn't kill them. But it'd stun them, and then I could put them in a sack and take them to the veterinarian. Because I will show you the next time that I go and try to do something with them. My hands look like I have taken a razor blade myself. So, I mean, I'm telling you something. I got nothing against any of God's creatures except water moccasins and brown scorpions, both of which live at our place. You know, I saw a brown scorpion on my bed in my mama's farmhouse. On my bed. So, but those are the only two of God's creatures that need to die. And when I do retire, I will not have a 16-year-old wife, but I will have a .22 pistol, and I'm going to sit and shoot snakes until I die. And I'm going to pretend to fish, but I'm going to shoot snakes. But next to them, cats are coming in there at number 3. Are we at time? Well, I didn't meet Jimmy because Jimmy's been written about to death. And their relationship has been written about to death. And Mickey Gilly I didn't because he did not figure strongly into the story. Now Jimmy did. But it's Jerry Lee's version of facts. And, you know, I did, you know, again, I wrote history. And we had to be true to history. But...
Did he have any good relatives?
Yeah, let me read you. Let me read you, just to give you a snapshot of Jerry Lee's relatives. This is the beginning of chapter 1, and I think we'll finish on this, if that's okay. I'm sorry if I didn't get to everybody, I really am, but we can talk in line. While the people behind you are cussing you. The water would rise up every few years, wash across the low, flat land, and take everything a poor man had. Ruin his cotton and corn and drown his hogs, pour filth and dead fish into his home, even push the coffins from the earth, and float his ancestors all the way to Abiel's. Jerry Lee's sister, Frankie Jean, tells of a day the rains beat down, the rivers rose, and the swelling groundwater shoved the dead from the mud. Quote, Uncle Henry and Aunt Maxine had been nipping, and they went by Uncle Will's grave and saw he'd come part way out of the ground. Uncle Henry said, "Oh Lord, Maxine, the rapture has done come and the Lord has left us here." He tried to take Will and Will just wouldn't go. "Oh God, Maxine, we done been left behind." "Oh God, Maxine, I told you not to buy that whiskey."